What's up, Pirates? Wraith and Jim here with Awaken TCG, and today we have the long-awaited video, how to win your OP07 pre-release tournament. As you can see on the screen there, that is the winner card that we're going to have. We give you guys this every single set, and so for this OP07 set, it's the same thing. We're going to go over everything you need to know about the pre-release.
Yep. And same as last time, we're going to go over, just so we don't get any comments saying we don't know what we're talking about. These are just a few snapshots of pre-releases we've won in OP05 and OP04. We actually only attended one pre-release in OP06, which unfortunately neither of us won. We got pretty bad draws. That's just how it happens sometimes. But this time around, I am in a few, so should at least be able to get one win this time around. But as you can see, 1-1 with Croc in OP04, 1-1 with Kid in OP04 as well, and Wraith actually ended up winning one with Kid as well in OP05. So these are the credentials. We do have at least a little bit of an idea what we're talking about. So we've been doing this a while, since OP01. So please do listen to what we have to say. It is really great advice if you're trying to win your pre-release. But let's get right into it.
Yeah, so what leader should you play? I think this is very self-explanatory. It's always going to be Captain Kid. His leader effect just means your late game has an insane momentum swing, whether that be going for lethal, whether that be clearing board. All you have to do is trash one card, pay 3 Dawn, and you get 2 swings. And it's a game changer. You can always play your early game fast pace, very aggressive, and then for your late game, you're already set up. You don't need big units. You have this leader that can double 12k swing to go for game. It's still the best in my opinion, in our opinion, and it's probably the leader you want to play.
Yeah, just a quick thing I want to mention about Kid. In pre-release, obviously you don't get to pick what cards you run, so 9 times out of 10 you're going to get stuck with cards that you're never going to play and never want to play. Kid is one of the only leaders that can convert those cards into value, so that is why he's really good in the set. Also, they do need to draw blockers or they pretty much lose. And as of OP06, a new challenger is approaching. It is Jewelry Bonnie, which is another insane green supernova card, which is kind of a bit funny that our best 2 leaders now are both mono green supernovas. If you don't know, 5 life is pretty much always the go-to in pre-release. I don't think there'd ever be a 4 life leader that's worth running unless their leader effect was incredibly insane and not locked to an archetype. But as for Bonnie specifically, 1 Dawn to rest any character or leader is very, very strong, especially in a format where you are playing out your big vanillas. That is basically the meta. So now I just played out my 8k vanilla, and you got to choose. Do you want your leader to attack, or do you want your vanilla to attack? Because one of them is not attacking this turn. Only thing with Bonnie is you do have to play a bit off curve, right? If you want to have leader effect up, you have to leave 1 Dawn up, which a lot of the times isn't an issue. If you don't have cards for the perfect curve, you aren't doing it anyway. So in my testing, it's been really, really strong. And even competing with the likes of Kid. So if you do pull Bonnie, I really think it is an option to consider, but I would only consider it if you get a lot of blockers in your packs, because then you can beat Kids by countering leader swings with blockers and everything else with leader effect. But anyways, let's get into our other leader options here.
Yeah, we have a couple of other options if you don't have a Kid. Maybe you don't pull the Bonnie. So here's some other leaders that you might have just laying around that you could use. So first up, we have Monkey D. Luffy. The purple mono leader is you add the top card of your life to your hand and you ramp 1 active Dawn. And you have to have 0 or 3 or more. Or it's if you have 0 or 3 or more Dawn. So you can't use it your first turn on 1 or 2 Dawn. But it allows you to play your curve faster than your opponent, and so potentially these bigger monsters will have enough of a momentum swing for you to actually take the game before your opponent can catch up. So on your 3 Dawn, you can play a 4 Dawn vanilla, means you're going to 6 Dawn the next turn, but then if you leader effect again, you can play a 7. And so it just has the ability to ramp to these bigger units faster, and that can always be beneficial for you. You do have to take life, so it is a little bit cautious when doing so, but it's worked before, and it potentially could work again. Katakuri, he is an amazing leader because you're swinging 7,000 every turn with just one Dawn. We'll talk about it later, but there's a lot of 2Ks in this set, and so you probably never want to swing 6. So this is perfect. It gets you out of that 6K range. You go into 7 instantly, and then you can check your opponent or your life. So it's just a very standard leader that's great at pre-release.
Generically powerful for sure. And getting to our next two leaders here, we have Mono Blue Croc from the starter deck, which is, I'm sure, is not a leader a lot of you expected to see here. But as you saw in the credentials portion, I did win a pre-release with this leader. Basically, the game plan is you get the 10 Dawn. You drop your big guys leading up there. Maybe, I don't know, there's no 10 Dawn card, I don't think, this set, but once you get to 10 Dawn, you just start Dawn minusing forward. Getting rid of blockers, getting rid of big vanilla threats every single turn, and then just go face with your big guys onto leader, which your opponent's usually never swinging into because it just costs way too much Dawn. But that is the game plan. Just control the board and go for game, and it worked for me back in OP04. And then last but not least, we have an honorable mention for Roronoa Zoro. This leader effect is just always going to be generically decent, right? 1 Dawn on leader, which is already going to value make you leader a 6K, now makes every single character on your board 1 extra power, which matters a lot in a lot of scenarios. So definitely a strong leader that if it's the only one you have is one you can run for sure. One last note, a lot of you I'm sure are asking, where is green and yellow Yamato? Like a double attack leader, why is this not here? And that's because we don't think it's good. Main reason being, 4 life leader is always going to be rough in this format, unfortunately. Also, this time around, we will get into it, there is a lot of 2Ks. Yamato can't just do these crazy swing shenanigans, and there is also a lot of blockers. So pretty much, if there's any set that Yamato wasn't good for pre-release, this is the one.
100%. Definitely. And we can talk about it here. So as you guys can see on the screen, there is a ton of blockers that you can pull. Way too many to count, and Yamato really has a hard time shifting game plan when your opponent drops a blocker when you were just going to swing 9 at lead and make them take 2 life. So a lot of blockers means that, that's not going to work. And then here in the front, we have some blockers that we'd like to highlight. So we have the 3-4 Don Quixote do Flamingo, Baccarat, Caribou. We have Basile Hawkins. I think for me, the biggest one is probably this Basile Hawkins. It's a 6/7, cannot be removed. If it is removed, you can rest one of your opponent's characters to negate it. So basically, I'm not even sure if there is removal. I think there's some bigger cards with KO potential, like Stussy. But this just negates that, and it's a 6/7 blocker. So it's just a huge body that's honestly not going to get removed ever. Definitely a card you want to pick up.
Yeah, I'm probably using him as a swinger, and the thing to know with Hawkins, he's locked to supernova leaders, which, usually would matter, but if you guys are doing what we're recommending and playing Kid or Bonnie, they're actually both supernovas, so you don't need to worry about that. Hawkins effect will always work for you. But yeah, as far as blockers go, I don't know if we mentioned it, bringing every single blocker you see, especially with Kid being the #1 leader in this meta, you need blockers. If you don't see blockers, you lost. So every single one you see, no matter how bad, add it in your deck, you 100% need them. Next up here, though, another one you are going to bring every time you see it is a 2K. So OP07 is the set with the most 2Ks ever out of any set. I think the next most is 13 back in OP02. I could be wrong, but this set, though, is 100% the most ever at 14 2Ks. And they aren't even that rare. There's only one super rare 2K here. There's a lot of commons, a lot of uncommons, a few rares. So, at least in my testing as well, I've been pulling tons of 2Ks. So, If you don't know in pre-release, usually the meta is you swing 6, right? 6 is your new magic number because 2Ks are hard to come by. This set's a bit different. You're going to see at least 10 2Ks on average usually. Maybe less if you're a little unlucky, more if you're pretty lucky. So 7K is kind of back to being the magic number for pre-release. Obviously, you can still swing 6K if you're playing something on curve and you can only afford to swing 6K. That's still good. They still need to draw their 2Ks, but all I want to let you guys know is there's a lot to this set. So be wary because the 6K swings are not as good as they once were.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be crazy. Next up, we have the vanillas. So for this tier, I want to talk about it. You kind of always want to grab your vanillas, but I also want to emphasize the bigger cards, the bigger vanillas, the more useful characters in this set are all even curve. So I think it's going to be an even go second meta for this pre-release event. If you go second, you have cards like Boa, like this Mihawk that you see on screen. Draw one for an 8/10 body. These are insane cards, and so you can play these bigger vanillas on your even curve, which honestly is crazy momentum for you that your opponent won't ever be able to catch up. And then obviously this Boa is SR Boa Hancock. You freeze a whole character of your opponent's board, and you bottom deck a 1-drop or less. They probably won't have a 1-drop, but you freeze a whole character that cannot swing for a whole turn. So technically, it's like a +1 to your board, a -1 onto their board for the turn. And you develop the 6/8 vanilla. So an amazing card. Grab as many vanillas as possible, especially the top end ones. Those are going to win you games. But yeah, go second. I definitely want to emphasize go second. That is the better turn curve for this pre-release event.
Yeah, definitely a pretty good amount of practicing, and I don't know if I ever lost going second, and I don't know if I ever won going first, so it might just be whoever wins dice roll go second wins, but don't let your opponent know that. Next up and last up here, we have our must-take cards. There's actually not a whole lot of must-take cards this time around. And there's actually no must-take blue cards, not including the blockers or 2Ks or stuff we talked about earlier. But anyways, let's get right into these cards because if you ever pull these and see these, this is like an 100% no questions asked, you're putting this in your deck. So starting on the top left, we have Okiku. This is Okiku all the way back from OP01, is now getting an alt art here. It's obviously an SP, so the odds you pull any SP are really low, but if you do, you should play this. It's a 3/5. Dawn X1 when attacking, rest one character with a cost of 5 or less. So that's insanely good, especially considering this is a 3/5 stat line already, and I think there's only one blocker over 5 costs, which would be Basil Hawkins. So countering any blocker, especially with Kid Leader, is just way too good on a body that can attack. Like, this is just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and then next up we have Isho, 8 cost, 9,000 power. That reads Dawn X1. Give all your opponent's characters -3 cost, which in this probably doesn't do too much unless you combo it with like a Sabo or something. But on play, if your opponent has 6 or more cards in hand, trash 2 cards from your opponent's hand, which would be an insane value play for you. You got to establish this body and trash 2 of your opponent's cards, random at that. Again, SP, so probably going to be hard to come by. You probably won't see this, but it's a great pickup if you do.
For sure. And our last SP we want to mention here is Onami, an absolute yellow menace. I'm sure a ton of you have seen a lot last set. The body itself, obviously not that big a deal, but the ability to give your leader banish, especially on a double swinging kid, is absolutely terrifying. If you put him down really low on cards in hand and one turn, you're not done next turn, maybe I just want to go 9K, right? And double banish. That is definitely something that you can do. Take 2 cards from them, and now they extra don't have a lot of cards in hand. Not even to mention, the trigger just KOs a 5, because why not? So, Onami's busted, still busted here. Not much to say there.
Yeah, now let's go ahead and jump over to the top right. We have Stussy. It's the brand new black SR that we got. That's a 9 cost, 9,000 power. That reads on play. You may trash one of your characters, KO up to one of your opponent's characters. So It's just a KO anything as long as you trash one of your characters. So if you have, something already on board that's more of a weaker unit, you can go ahead and trash that and then KO whatever is on your opponent's board. Huge card, huge momentum swing, especially if your opponent just plays a 7-cost vanilla, 8-cost vanilla, something pretty crazy. You can go ahead and just play this and negate their whole turn, which would be, insane value. So definitely want to pick up this Stussy.
Yep, and right next to Sussy here, our last black card we want to mention is going to be the Secret Rare Sabo. This card is so good. There's usually going to be 2 targets for this. Say like a 3/5, maybe a small blocker, paired with a 5-cost, usually a larger blocker or something of that sort. And then you can convert any card in your hand that you don't like into value by trashing it with this guy, KOing both, developing a 9k. Probably the best removal of this set. There's actually not a lot of removal, so Sabo's really your only out here. So definitely, if you ever see Sabo in your packs, you will only ever see one, just because it's a secret rare. But if you do, definitely take this card.
Yeah, and then jumping down to the second row on the left side, we have Monkey D Dragon. Short and sweet. This is a 8-cost, 9,000 power with rush that reads on play, give up to 2 rested Dawn cards to your leader or one of your other characters. So it's just an insane body that gives you so much tempo, right? When we talk about pre-release events, there's no game plan where it's like, okay, I'm going to play a mid-range deck, I'm going to stall, I'm going to play a late game control deck. There is no game plan other than out-tempo your opponent and get as much value as possible. And this card, it does exactly that. Being able to swing on the turn it is played and giving those 2 Dawn to your leader to get another 7k swing. You can go 7-9 at their face on your 8 Dawn turn, which could potentially put you in a lethal position if you're on Kid, right? So it's just an insane card. Monkey Dragon, it's an SR. Always want to pick it up.
Yep, next up, going into green here on the right, we have another SR in a Jewelry Bonnie. Going to be a 5/6 with 1,000 counter, and then on play you can lock one of your opponent's characters or Dawn cards. So I think you always want to lock a character with this card. Locking a Dawn card is not as good when you don't know your opponent has the play next turn. Obviously, if you have no targets, sure, you lock a Dawn card, but locking a character is always going to be insane. If they swung with a big body, say like a 7k to a 9k, locking that down with Bonnie is insanely strong. While developing a 6k body on board, which is always hard to swing into in a pre-release format, is going to be just a 100% take every single time.
Yeah, and then next up we have Fisher Tiger. This one's a little bit more calm. It's a 5/6 that reads, this character can attack characters on the turn in which it's played, and then its on play is useless because we're not playing a Fishman or Merfolk leader. But essentially it has rush, swinging into your opponent's rested characters on the turn it's played. So again, you get that momentum, which is what you want in these events. And so it's a good card. It's a calm card, but I would definitely take it.
For sure. Next up here, we have a Monkey D. Luffy in his Afro Luffy outfit. Fantastic. Yes, finally got Afro Luffy in the game, but he's going to be a 6/7. Reading Activate main, you can do Dawn -3. That is a little bit of a big ask, but if you're at 10 Dawn, it doesn't really matter much. Then it's going to be if your opponent has 3 or more characters, set this character as active. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only restand effect besides Kid, obviously. But having a double restand effect sounds pretty busted. Like Dawn -3, so if I attack with Kid and then I do 3 Dawn to restand him, I can now use that 3 Dawn that I just rested for Kid to restand my Luffy. So now we have double attackers on board. I really don't know who's living that, especially if you are at like 2 or lower life and you only have like 1 blocker. So definitely a must take every time you see it. Massive menace for sure.
Yeah, and next up we have Slow Beam Sword. It's a 2-cost event, counter event that reads Dawn -1. Up to one of your leader characters gains plus 2,000 power during this battle. Then rest up to one of your opponent's characters. So no restrictions. You get to rest any one of your opponent's characters regardless of cost, which is an insane momentum swinger. It allows you to, rest a big body. Maybe you even take the hit. Right? You're only getting plus 2,000, so maybe they're swinging 9, but it can rest their opponent's board, and now they just lose out on the attack. And maybe if they were going for lethal, it's just, you know, a card that's going to benefit you in the end game. And then it has a trigger. You add 1 Dawn as active. But yeah, you really use that for the main effect, and is a busted card.
For sure. And getting into yellow here, we have our SR Monkey D. Luffy. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this card. This is in a lot of meta decks, but it's basically just going to be a 5/6 body for the most part. But when you're at 2 or less life, you can convert this into an attack and also a KO if you want to get it off your board and KO, say, one of your opponent's blockers. My favorite play with this card, like say we're in late game, we're playing Kid, I'm swinging 6 or 7 with this card, opponent has 1 life and maybe a blocker on board. They want to block bigger attacks. So if I'm only swinging small with this, they kind of have to say, okay, maybe they're going to block this and now get double attacked by Kid with a massive swing, or am I going to take this and then know that my blocker is just going to get popped after the fact, after this card swung. So really, really good card, especially for any game's late game. Not to mention the trigger is great. You just are going to get to KO one of your opponent's 4-cost characters, which hits a lot of stuff this set for sure.
Yeah, definitely allows you to bait your opponent into using that blocker, because then you don't even have to use the Monkey D. Luffy effect if they just get rid of the blocker that way.
Exactly.
Next up, we have 10 cost Portgas D Ace. It's a 10,000 power on play. Add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life cards. Then, if you have 2 or less life cards, this character gains Rush. Absolutely broken. Especially when by the time you play it, you should be in that threshold, like at least 1 life. 2 life maybe. Even then, if you're at 2 life, you don't even have to gain a life because you add up to 1 life. So you can even just play this for 10, swing for 10k the same turn you play it, if you need that momentum, or you can just heal and leave it standing. But regardless, always 100% take.
Yeah, I think the biggest body this set as well. But last but not least here, we have a Blaze Slice, looking a little out of place here, but it is still a very strong card. It's going to be 1 cost event during main and counter. Up to 1 of your leader or character cards gets 1,000 power during this turn. So if you counter with this card, you are 6k for the rest of the turn. Then if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, arrest one of your opponent's characters at the cost of 4 or less. So very similar to Amaru in the fact that we are buffing something and then resting a 4. However, this one does it on counter. And it also only has a 2 or less life card threshold. Trigger is going to be rest one of your opponent's characters at the cost of 4 or less. That can actually really come in handy this set for sure. But mainly you're using this to buff your Kid leader, rest a blocker, go for game. That is the main way to use this card. And it is definitely busted in a Kid deck for sure.
And with that being said, there is actually no amazing blue cards this go around. Maybe the 6/8 Boa Vanilla that we shared earlier that freezes a unit, but besides that, there is no crazy blue cards to add onto the must-take list this time around. All right, Pirates, thank you guys so much for watching until the end of this video. That was the entire How to Win Your OP07 pre-release tournament. I hope you guys win all of the Captain Kid winner cards. I wish you the best of luck in all of your pre-release tournaments. I hope you guys win out. But with that being said, make sure to like this video, comment down below what you thought of this pre-release guide, and subscribe to our channel. We will see you guys on the next one. Peace.